So, good afternoon. It's 3 o'clock and we're here outside John Knox's house here in historic Royal Mile, or the High Street. Now, the High Street is actually part of the Royal Mile. For those of you who know Edinburgh, you remember that the Royal Mile connects the castle, which is at the top, to the palace, which is at the bottom of the Royal Mile. But this is the High Street section, and we're specifically outside the house of John Knox. Now just turn out here, you can see this is John Knox's house. Now we're not going to talk about John Knox in any great detail. I mean, he is an important man. He actually led the Protestant Reformation here in Scotland, going back to the 16th century, but we're not going to talk about him. We're actually going to go inside his house though. Now if you're on the Royal Mile, people often walk past this place and think, oh, we don't want to go in here. It's open to the public. Please go in here. Now you're going to see here, we've got actually just a little bit of detail here. You've got Mary Queen of Scots here, and you've got John Knox here, and they're back to back. And the Mary Queen of Scots and John Knox did not get on very well together. In fact, I would safely say they actually hated each other. But we're going to go inside because we're going to take you into the Scottish Storytelling Centre, and that's what we're here for, because inside here is one of Edinburgh's little hidden gems, and you can actually hear the crows up there calling down. Maybe that is John Knox come back. So let's go inside. Now as you go inside the building, it gets a wee bit dark, but, and we go in here, you come into what is the Storytelling Centre. Now have a wee look at the building here. If you look at the roof up here, you see it's very, very low, very dark. And if you go into some of these wee dark corners, you might find some strange people sitting here in the Storytelling Centre. So let me introduce you to Barbara.
Hello.
So this is Barbara Maclean. Barbara is also a Blue Badge guide, one of our colleagues.
I'll have to talk up.
And Barbara has got a long association with the Storytelling Centre here in Edinburgh. And she's going to be our guide in the Storytelling Centre itself. So hello Barbara, how are you?
I'm very well, Joe. Thank you very much. Nice to see you both here, and welcome everybody here to John Knox's house. But we're going to take you through into a rather surprising section if you didn't know it existed. It's attached to John Knox's house. As Joe has probably told you, it's the oldest, one of the oldest houses in Edinburgh. And come through into this little dark space, and the low ceiling, and in the 1500s this was a busy little thriving shopping centre, really, because the man who owned the house, whose name was James Mossman, he rented out spaces to other merchants, and so it was like a little early shopping mall.
So it was like an early Macy's.
Exactly, in the early 1500s. And now we're going to go through, and what you see here is a lot of books, and because these books here on display it's like a wonderful selection of stories, folk tales from all over Scotland. And why is that? It's because we're going now into what is the Scottish Storytelling Centre, which is a marvellous space we're going to tell you about.
So it's almost like going through the history of Scotland. We're coming from the outside into this dark place of John Knox, and we're going into the period of the Enlightenment.
Oh yes.
And we have a little cafe in here. Now the cafe is also open to the public, so we'd encourage you when you're here in Edinburgh to come inside, and you'll see a wee bit further on, and it's called the Haggis Box. But look how the light changes as we're coming in here. Now Barbara, Scotland's got a very, very long tradition of storytelling, both oral and oral, and the contributions come from different parts of the ancient peoples. So we're thinking of the Celtic culture contribution, the Nordic culture further north, and we've got a contribution of the Gaelic language. We've also got the Anglo-Saxon, we've got the Scots language. So many different rich scenes which have culminated and coming together. And we're going to tell a wee bit more about the history of the Storytelling Centre, and we've got a wee surprise at the end for it as well.
That's right. Now, you talked about all the different strands there, Joe, because as Scotland was a nation full of many, many cultural influences, as William McIlvanney said, we're a mongrel tradition in Scotland, aren't we?
We are indeed.
We have the Vikings, and we have all kinds of other influences of invaders coming in, the English, for a start, lots of them. And we've got all that reflected in our stories, in our culture. Can we, before we go into the story of the Storytelling Centre, I see a lady over there called Laura, who I think will tell us a little bit about the cafe.
Okay,
so
quite pleased with that.
They specialise here in haggis, and sometimes our visitors like to know Well, and as you say, the shooting season is on now.
Haggis season
Yes.
is fairly on now,
Uh-huh.
yeah?
So we're going to take you
I'll
into
just
the
take you
cafe.
around here, but you can see, we go behind here. And we've got the Haggis Cafe. We've got some hearty soups and haggises of different versions here. Hello there.
This is Laura.
Hi, Laura.
Nice to meet you.
So, Laura, you've got the Haggis Box Cafe,
Yeah, that's right.
and you're open,
Every day, 10 till 5,
including Sundays.
including Sundays.
No rest, eh?
No.
And you're in the heart of John Knox's
Exactly.
house here. Oh my
You can't
God.
approve at all.
John Knox will be spinning in his
Exactly,
grave.
he would. That's what that noise is on a Sunday.
And so anybody can come in here. They can. We've got lovely tray bakes, but you've also got haggis.
Yeah, we've got haggis. We've got so we do haggis, neeps and tatties, which is the most traditional way to eat haggis in Edinburgh. Neeps is sweet or turnip, and tatties is potatoes. And we've also got a really nice vegan version, which we can do vegetarian or vegan.
Okay. And also you do nice coffees and
We
teas
do
and
have
whole
good
and other
coffees and
stuff.
teas, and we've got some quiche, bacon rolls, porridge, Scotch eggs in the menu as well.
And I can testify to your very hearty soups that you make here as well.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Okay. So when you're in the Royal Mile, you're on the High Street, you come to John Knox's house, even if you're not visiting John Knox's house or the Storytelling Centre, they can still
They can
use
still
the cafe.
come and come to the cafe for sure. It's a great stop-off point, and it's a nice space. It can be like quite peaceful and amongst the buzz of the Royal Mile as well.
Especially during August when it's very, very busy, it's a nice little refuge.
Exactly.
And can also say that if you actually come in and buy something in here, they can use your very nice toilets as well.
They can. You actually don't even have to buy something to use the toilet.
Say that. In Edinburgh, you've always got to know where your loos are. Never let a good loo pass you by.
Is there not a law that you have to? Is there not a law that in Scotland you have to let somebody use their toilet?
There is a law. Well, they have to give them a drink of water. Whether or not they want to drink the water in the toilet is a different story.
Sorry, that went a bit left field. That.
But thanks very much for that. So you've got an invite to come in here anytime you wish to come in, and it's a nice, and a cold day like today, it's a very nice place to come in, and it's a good convivial atmosphere as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good to
And
see you.
come in and see it. So we'll take you more into the Storytelling Centre itself. So Barbara, tell us about the history of the Storytelling Centre.
Well, it's very interesting because way back in the 1980s, there was big international Commonwealth Games held in Edinburgh, and alongside that was a Festival of the Arts. But very little in terms of Scottish culture was on show. A bit of bagpiping was about the sum total of it. And at that time, this space was actually called the Nether Bow. Nether means below, and the Nether Bow was the gate, the locked gate that locked the citizens of the old town into the city, the walled
Edinburgh
city.
was a walled city,
Edinburgh
yeah.
was a walled city to keep the English invaders out.
yeah.
And so this man, Donald Smith, was the director of the Netherbow Arts Centre here, and he was quite exercised about the fact there was no Scottish contribution in this cultural celebration, and so he did something about it. He started up something called Bothy Tales. Now, we were talking about bothies earlier. Bothy culture really came from agricultural workers who stayed in rather rough cottages, and they had their songs and their stories at night. You know, they had a hard job during the day, but they enjoyed themselves in the evening with their stories and their song. Their very, very cultural sort of contribution from the northeast. Bothy nowadays is just the name of a cottage that is open to climbers and walkers who might be benighted when they're out on the hill, and they're usually completely free to use. It's a culture that we have here in Scotland. So
Let's take a
we're going to
look
go
walk
through into
inside.
the bigger space.
Yeah, and as we go in here, I want to show something here again. Going back to the we talked about the Haggis Box Cafe. I want to show you something here. We've got maps on the wall here. You can see it coming in here, and they've got little pins on the map, and the little pins are from people who visited the cafe and have actually tasted haggis for the first time.
That's right, and love it. Yes.
Yeah. So we're coming into the centre here a wee bit more. So we're coming out again, this beautiful space, all natural light in here, absolutely gorgeous. And going to give us a wee bit more of the history on this one here?
Yes, I was just saying that the man who really sort of inaugurated it was the director, and still is the director of the Storytelling Festival. But a lot of other people came together, and their names all start with D.
D.
There was Donald, there was Duncan, there was David, and now there's Daniel. You're going to meet David and Daniel in a minute. But so it was a sort of thing that snowballed from the early days, and very soon and Donald was reaching out to the cultures of the travelling people in Scotland. We have a big department in the University of Edinburgh called the School of Scottish Studies, and researchers were going out into the field from the 50s to record the stories and songs of the travelling people. So one of the travellers from that culture, a man called Duncan Williamson, was very much instrumental in the early days of the storytelling centre. So to begin with, it was just one room in the old Netherbow Arts Centre, and eventually in 2007 it was opened as a custom-built storytelling centre, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's full of natural light, and we have an etching on the window here, which is a quotation from a storyteller, novelist, and playwright and poet, George Mackay Brown, who was from Orkney, and he gave his blessing to the Storytelling Centre. In fact, Donald Smith, the first director, read something that George had written in an introduction to one of his books of tales, Winter Tales it was called, and he was so inspired by George's words that he wrote him a little note thanking him and saying, I just thought you might like to know that some of us in Edinburgh are getting together to create a storytelling forum and a centre for stories. And George wrote back a lovely note. And what Donald didn't know was George was actually on his deathbed. He was in hospital. He died just a few days later. And his letter said, we've never been more in need of stories and the healing power of stories. So he gave his blessing to the Storytelling Centre, and they've always used him as a guiding light. And so it's quite difficult to read, but it's a little quotation from a poem by George. A star for a cradle, sun for a plough, a fire for old stories, a candle for the dead. By such glimmers we seek you. So the idea of the story being around the fire and the stories being passed round from person to person.
No, I've got my own little story about George Mackay Brown as well, because when I was in high school there, the head of our English department was a very good friend of George Mackay Brown, and we were studying his book called The Orkney Tapestries. Now, I went to a Catholic school and George Mackay Brown converted to Catholicism. So we were then taken up for, it was supposed to be a weekend up to the Orkneys with George Mackay Brown, staying in a barn and sleeping in a barn, and he was giving us all the stories of, giving an interpretation of what it all meant, because there's a lot of mysticism in his writing as well. And so we was up there, we had a major storm, and so instead of a weekend, we were stuck up there for the whole week. And I can tell you, after a week in a barn with nothing but mice to keep me company and freezing cold, I was so pleased to get back to the mainland. I love the Orkneys.
Are lovely, they are beautiful.
But we couldn't get out in a force 10 gale.
No, you wouldn't.
So we were stuck inside. So I loved the Orkneys for what I saw the first time. But again, I'm a big fan of the Orkneys, a big fan of George Mackay Brown, one of our great storytellers as well.
He is.
And we're just looking out in the gardens here.
Yes.
This is one of my favourite hidden histories just down here. Maybe some of you have been down here. It's Patrick Geddes garden there. Amazingly clever guy, Patrick Geddes of the early 20th century, who was a town planner and sociologist, and what believed in open spaces and opening up the old town where people had left during the 19th century to bring people back. So there's a nice sculpture there of Patrick Geddes, and if you could see the garden space there as well, with a little visit at the back of the Storytelling Centre here as well.
And it's fair to say that what you see in the old town of Edinburgh now is really down to what Patrick Geddes did.
Indeed, Patrick Geddes, he was a genius, I think, an absolute genius, and he was way ahead of his time, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Way ahead of his time in terms of, thinking, well, it's important for people living in, and he invented the word conurbation, living in urban spaces, to have green space. It's very, very important. And it also is wonderful, the sort of ideal is to be able to walk to work
Yeah.
You know, that's something that...
He was a visionary.
He was a visionary.
Complete visionary.
Yeah.
He actually owned the Camera Obscura.
Yes.
He called it the Outlook Tower.
Yes.
And that's where he actually shared his vision with the...
You used to work
I
there,
did work
Joe.
in there, indeed. And he brought his vision to the councillors of Edinburgh, to the great and the good. And he used the Outlook Tower or the Camera Obscura to get his message across to the city. And it's from his vision that we now see the Old Town. Otherwise, the Old Town could have been destroyed.
A lot of it would have been
'Cause it
destroyed.
would-
He saved a lot of it from demolition, didn't he?
Yep.
Yeah.
So going back to the storytelling centre, so we're in a massive big room here. This is a nice communal area, but it also has a theatre where they do shows, so people
Yes.
can check out the shows.
That's
But we'll
right.
talk about that a wee bit more because we're going to meet Daniel, who's the events manager here.
Yes, he's the program manager.
Program manager.
He's waiting for us over here.
Yep.
And we've got a few other people to speak to you too.
Okay, and we've got some other people who want to speak to you as well. So we're going to introduce you to Daniel. Hello, Daniel. So Daniel is a program manager here at the Storytelling Centre.
That's right.
And you're going to tell us a wee bit what your role is here
Yes.
and programmes and a wee bit more history.
Yes.
A wee bit more meat in the bone,
Yeah,
Daniel.
so I feel I've got the best job in the world sometimes. It's very varied, every day is different. So my main job though is to look after all the different types of events that we have here. Programming some ourselves and also encouraging people to bring events to us. There's a big part of the spirit of this venue is about people being able to explore their own creativity, you know, and us being open to that. So on an average week here, we've got maybe a couple of live storytelling events, a workshop, a family event, maybe a couple of theatre performances, some traditional music, ceilidh dance, all range of different things.
So it's a part of a community as well. It's not just for it's you're in a real historic part of the city.
Yep.
You have a living community around here as well. So you've got a lot of relationship with the local community as well.
Yeah, definitely, and the artistic community, the creative community in Edinburgh, and that's, you know, it's core to what we're doing. We're not just a producing theatre or a producing house who do our own thing and that's that.
Yeah.
It's a mixture of things, you know. Sometimes we do come up with our own ideas, but we're very open to other people bringing things in as well as working with other bigger organisations who are looking for a venue. You know, we work with a lot of other festivals in Edinburgh and within Scotland who do great work but don't have a physical space to put it on.
Yeah.
You know, like in May we've got the Children's Festival coming.
Of course,
to us.
that's a big festival
it's
here in
great
Edinburgh,
festival.
yeah.
So they use our theatre and they do a whole week of events, delegate events, discussions, as well as children's performances. And that's perfect for us. We're delighted to host that kind of work as well.
Yeah. And so what would you say was your busiest period of the year?
Well, we've got 3 festivals that were kind of core
This
festivals.
is a city of festivals, isn't it?
Indeed,
Yeah.
indeed. But August is probably the busiest one because
Yeah.
that's a full month and we do events within the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. Tends to be about 10 to 12 shows a day, every day. So it's on a very quick rotation through the whole building. But it's brilliant, a really kind of fun time. The biggest one for us, though, maybe not the busiest in terms of a whole month, but the biggest one's October, and that's the Scottish International Storytelling Festival,
Okay.
which is our big flagship event. We run it out of here in Edinburgh, but it's the Scottish International Storytelling Festival, so
Okay.
it happens throughout the whole country.
Okay, and part of the diaspora, the Scottish diaspora as well?
I mean, it's absolutely. We've a huge international element to that festival because it's our big event. We were able to bring storytellers from different parts of the world and welcome audience members from different parts of the world. It's usually the last 2 weeks in October.
Okay.
A good time for storytelling. The nights are getting darker.
It is.
And
Halloween's coming
we
up.
finish on Halloween.
Over there, is
So
it?
we
Yeah.
finish with ghost stories and all that stuff.
Okay, so we're bringing in Samhain or the
Exactly.
Celtic festivals, the
Yep.
whole thing, all
We
bringing
do
it in.
There's the big fire festival here in Edinburgh on
Yeah,
Halloween.
of course, and we've got Beltane coming up quite soon as well.
Yes,
Again,
well, so that's the third one, right?
Okay.
It's Edinburgh Trad Fest, which is always around Beltane time at the end of
Okay.
April. This year, first week in May, I think it runs.
Okay.
So we look at, you know, it's the other side of it, isn't it? There's buds blooming
Yeah.
and there's stories.
Do you want
be
to
told.
explain to our viewers here as to what Beltane and Samhain are
Yeah, well,
in terms of the Celtic?
the Gaelic Celtic festivals, you know,
Yeah.
it's the coming of spring and the coming of the darkness in the winter time,
Yeah.
really, you know.
So it's
that's
the fight between light and dark.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yes,
and the
yes.
rebirth, the
Yeah.
Beltane is a rebirth, and then the Samhain is when everything's getting settled down for the winter
And when
nights.
the veil is thinnest
Yeah.
between the living and the dead.
Yeah. And that's when the dead shall rise.
Aye,
So we
indeed,
get our
yeah.
stories.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people do think, and I have lived in the US and been to the US many times, and a lot of people in the US do think that they invented Halloween. but we like to burst bubbles here.
Sure.
So we like to tell the truth. It came from here.
Well, yes, Scotland and Ireland too. you know,
So your trick-or-treaters are known as geysers here in Scotland.
yes.
And the geysers would go from house to house and they would do a little turn, a little act.
indeed, yeah.
It wasn't just like throwing dog poo at your door, as it
No.
happens in the United States sometimes.
Oh, right, gosh.
Yeah.
It's
So
not a tradition here, no.
No, if you say trick-or-treat, yes, for a trick, they'll do a trick on you. So here it was like you went in, it was a tradition to bring the kids in,
Yeah.
and they would do a little turn for you, a little song, a little dance, or a
Yes,
joke.
a wee story as well.
Yeah, and you'd be treated. Traditionally, it was with apples and nuts, but now obviously it's got just sweeties and candies.
Sweets now,
Yeah.
It's the Americanisation of it all.
Of
see?
course it is.
Yeah.
Well, it's a blending of the cultures.
Yes, indeed.
Right. So, and I'm just looking behind you. You've got a very interactive wall here.
Yeah, well, this lovely space we're in here, the storytelling court, which I know you can see we've got a big exhibition wall where we do kind of rotating exhibitions on the big wall there. And this space is used for many different styles of events. We have, we can do receptions in here, we do ceilidh dances in here, storytelling events, but it's also a great space for families to come and visit. People can sit in the cafe, have a cup of tea or a coffee, and their children can play in this area. Now, this has been here since we opened. It's a kind of interactive story wall for children, and all kind of Scottish stories. You can see here there's Peter Pan.
Now we all know Peter Pan, J.M. Barrie.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And then some more traditional stories. There's the Thomas the Rhymer one up there, and you can so the kids can explore, open different. It's a bit of a scary
Now
one.
we've
there,
got
you
this
see.
one here. This is
The
Tam
Tam
Shanter.
Shanter,
You'll know that from the Robert Burns here.
I have lots of different stories there for the children to explore.
And you got the wee one here down Wee Willie Winkie.
Indeed.
There we go. Take you right down there, Wee Willie Winkie. Running through the tune, upstairs and downstairs in his night goon. You can actually visit the grave of the author in Glasgow. He's buried in the necropolis, or the guy who wrote Wee Willie Winkie. His name was? William Miller. So you can actually go and a lot of people don't know that Wee Willie Winkie was actually written by a guy in Glasgow, but you can go and visit his grave there as well. So lots of stories. Now again, if we're looking at we've got Barbara here sitting behind the posters here. Maybe Barbara can tell us a wee bit of the...
This is interesting. This Scottish traveller's proverb, stories are told eye to eye, mind to mind, and heart to heart. And I noticed when we got your Wi-Fi signal,
Yes.
Daniel, it's eye to eye, isn't it? Yes.
It's a great way to describe what storytelling is.
Yes.
I always use that proverb as how to describe what storytelling is. It's not just for children. It's not reading from a book. It's this connection.
Yeah.
And that's so I always fall back on that.
Yeah.
proverb,
We also talk about the oral and the oral tradition of Scots, not just the folklore, but the Scots storytelling as well.
Well, we were talking about Patrick Geddes just a few minutes ago, and I mean, he had a thing about learning, and this is why he was so ahead of his time, I think, because he talked about how the head should come third, not first. It's the heart, the hands, and the head in that order.
Yep.
And that's the sort of way to learn, isn't it? I think that's the way to learn. So other things that are interesting here, I like this quote from Hamish Henderson, by the way. Did you see the sort of head, the bust of Hamish up there on the wall? He was a very, very significant figure in our storytelling and our oral traditions and collecting stories from travellers. Trying to collect these riches is like holding a bucket under a waterfall.
Such is the contribution of the different veins in our
Indeed.
history here. Yeah.
And this is George Mackay Brown's quotation. Now, this is when Donald Smith, the original director and current director of the festival, the Storytelling Festival, wrote a note to George and to tell him about the idea of having a storytelling forum and a centre. And he got a great encouraging note from George saying this: never have we had so much need of storytelling and its healing powers.
Yeah.
So
And it's fair to say in Scotland we've got contributions from the different regions, because we've got the different dialects of regions. So you've got the Mearns area up in the northeast.
yes.
You've got the Outer Hebrides. You've got the Dumfries and Galloway. You've got the Central Belt. You've got the Lowlands. You've got the different Doric. You've got all the different dialects and traditions of the country. And I guess this is a place, again, in the ceilidh tradition of the gathering space, where people from all the different traditions can gather and share the whole richness of
And
this.
then, of course, you also have storytellers from all over the world now, don't you?
Yeah,
Coming
and many
in
now
October.
living and working here in Scotland, adding to that flow.
So we're very welcoming people to come in with the different stories.
Absolutely,
We'll share
yeah.
it. All the new peoples who come in will come in with their own stories and folklore as well. So I guess.
Speaking of stories,
Yeah.
I think we have a person waiting to tell us. I'd like to introduce David Campbell, who is a very, very well-known storyteller both in Scotland and internationally. And although David is sort of not normally giving stories out at this point, having sort of retired from the scene, he decided he was going to make an exception for us today.
A special gift.
And he's come to tell a story.
Yes,
Thank you,
well,
David.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, I'm going to tell a story. Is that what you want to hear?
Of course, yes.
Yes, right. This is a story from Shetland by a very nice man and a very fluent man called George Peterson. And so it starts with a journey from here into the north, over the stormy Pentland Firth, past Orkney and up to Shetland. And Shetland, of course, is very interesting in many ways. For instance, could I get some water, by the way? For instance, for its fiddlers, of course. And I was just talking to Ali Bain the other day, who, of course, is the most famous of the fiddlers at the moment. But it's famous for its fiddlers, and it's also notable for the haar, that sort of mist that creeps in over the island and banishes everything. And that comes into this little story. But the other thing in Shetland is the Trowie people, the little people. They're about the height of your knee, maybe. And these little people could be black hairs, or strangely enough, they can have beautiful red hair. And they are known for their mischief, but also for their spectacular love of the fiddle. Now, our story begins with Ranald Johnson. And Ranald Johnson is well known as a great fiddler. And he would be fiddling all over the island. He would be fiddling at christenings, he would be fiddling at any birthdays, he'd be fiddling at any occasion that was a celebration. And he had just got married to a beautiful woman called Janet. And so when he was just married, Janet said to him, "What art thou doing today, Ranald?" He said, "Well, I'm going to be playing the fiddle at a wedding." "Oh," she said, "wilt you be home for thy supper?" He said, "What is for supper, Janet?" She said, "It'll be leek and tatty soup." "Oh," he said, "leek and tatty soup? I will not fail, it is my favourite." She said, "Well, remember, there will be the redding up of kin, there will be the storytelling, there will be the whiskey, and there will be the music. Are you sure thou will be home for thy supper?" He said, "If it is leek and tatty supper, soup, I will be home." And so off he went, and of course, it was a proper Shetland occasion. There was all these things, plenty of chatter, plenty of singing, plenty of music, and he was asked to play, and he was playing, of course, every kind of reel and every kind of Shetland tune and many other tunes. And the night rolled on, and he was having another little whiskey, of course. And she said finally, "Wilt thou stay for thy supper, Ranald?" "Oh," he said. "Oh, no," he said. "I have promised my wife, Janet, I will be home, for it is leek and tatty soup, and it is my favourite." "Oh," she said, "you had better go then in that way." So out he came. When he came out, it was a deep mist. You could hardly see before you. So he was with his fiddle under his arm. Suddenly, a little fellow in front of him, the size of a knee, a little Trowie man, said, "Do art Ranald Johnson?" He said, "I am Ranald Johnson." He said, "Do as a fiddler?" He said, "I am a fiddler." He said, wilt you come and play the fiddle at our little celebration we're having a wedding? He said, I am sorry, I've promised my wife Janet I will be home. I could not come today. The little man, he looked so sad it would have brought a tear out of a stone. Oh my goodness, he looked so sad. He said, we don't have a fiddler, and a wedding without a fiddler is no wedding at all. Would you not come and play a peedy little tune, just a little peedy tune? And the little fella's face was so sad that he said, I will come and play a peedy little tune. And so at that, a horse appeared, and the three little men went hop, hop, hop. And now he was on top of the horse, and the mist was breaking in front as fast as it was gathering behind, and they stopped. Three little men said, down, down, down. And there was a hole in the hillside. He said, follow us. And there were all these little candles all the way down, and he came to a hall. And in the hall were all these little people, and they were looking forward. And at the front, there was a woman, a little lady, in a beautiful grass green dress, and a little man, all in black. And the priest in front of them was saying, and I now do pronounce to trowy man and trowy wife. And all the little people were clapping little claps. And they kissed, and there were more claps from the little people. And then they said, now Ranald, do will play a tune. So Ranald said, of course, took out his fiddle and began to play reels and strathspeys and every kind of Scottish tune, and then tunes he didn't even know he knew. And finally, after many tunes, the little man said, thank you, Ranald, we have danced to your tunes, that is enough. Then he said, what could I give thee? And he said, silver or gold, yellow bunny? No, he said, that's all right. Thy pleasure is enough. And then the little fellow said, but I tell thee what, I can tell thee what is going to happen to you. He said, what is that? He said, do it married? He said, yes. Do it going to have 4 little bairnies? He said, 4 little bairnies, that's nice. Yes, he said, and the first one will be a little girl. He said, a little girl, that's lovely. The little fellow looked very serious, said, but this will be the noisiest little girl that was ever born in Shetland. I said, that's not good. He said, no. He said, then I will have 4 more. He said, 4 more, that's lovely. And he said, and they will be 4 little boys. He said, that's lovely, 4 little boys. And the first one will be noisier than the little girl. You would hear him screaming in the Skagerrak in Sweden. He said, that's terrible. He said, but I tell thee what, come close, come close. He said, I will give thee something. And he said, listen. And he played a little tune. And the little tune went like this. Play that tune, thy bairnie will go to sleep like an angel. He said, now, time to go. And so the little men started to run out, and he followed them down this little passage, and they came out of the passage, and there was the horse. And they went hop, hop, hop onto the horse, and they flew through the mist, and in no time at all, they arrived at Ranald's house, and the little man said, whoop, and doodle-doo, down they went, pop, pop, pop. And in a moment, the horse was gone, the men were gone, and he was outside his house, and he thought, leaking tatty soup. So in he went, And Janet had a face like icicles. She said, "Where hast you been?" He said, I was playing at a wedding. She said, "What do you mean you're playing at a wedding?" She said, "I went to the wedding. They said you had gone a week ago." I said, "What?" He said, "Yes, where hast you been?" He said, "Well," he said, "I did just play at the Trowie wedding." "Oh," she said, Ranald, if the Trowie people get you could be gone a year, 7 years, 50 years. Oh, Ranald, they've let you come back to me." And so he said, "Yes." So she said, "You can have leek and tatty soup till the end of our days." And so they did, of course. But whenever the bairnies would howl and yowl, which they did, he would take out his fiddle and play his little tune. But sometimes Ranald was not there, and the bairns would be howling and yowling, and so they would say, Janet, a very clever woman, she made up her own words to the tune, and this is Janet's words to the tune.
Hushaba man's peery fleur, sleep, oh sleep, come taddy shoon. Mam shall watch dear by her, till thy bonny sleep be doon. Till thy bonny sleep be doon. Till thy bonny sleep be doon. Mam shall watch dear by her, till thy bonny sleep be doon.
And so the bairnies would go to sleep like angels, and that tune is still going strong in Shetland today, and no doubt they're still singing it.
So that was one from the Nordic Shetland traditions, and so we've also got the Celtic traditions, we've got the Mearns traditions, we've got all these different traditions from the different parts of Scotland. I want to say thank you so much for that. It's a great contribution to us as well, and a great to help showcase the Scottish Storytelling Centre.
And a great pleasure to you.
Thank you very much indeed, and I'm going to get, this is Beverly, who did her singing there. So hello. Beverly, tell us a wee bit about yourself.
I've been in Scotland about 30 years now, and David here was my storytelling mentor, so I've been telling stories for about 7 years. And I think that the storytelling community is very strong here, very supportive, and telling stories has really helped me to, as someone who wasn't born in Scotland, to really connect with the landscape and with the people and the history of Scotland.
And a great contribution you've made as well, Beverly. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, David and Beverly. It's great to have you here. And I'm going to say goodbye, but I want Barbara to have one of her final words here.
Oh, well, my final word is just to tell you all that the library, the bookshop here at the Storytelling Centre has wonderful, wonderful selection of stories from all over Scotland. And this one, Story Harvest by David himself, who you were just treated to a story by David. It's a wonderful collection of stories that David's put together. So I hope you've enjoyed this afternoon.
Yep.
We've enjoyed it.
And again, the Storytelling Centre is open to the public. It's open 7 days a week if you want to come in for coffee and soup and haggis. It's on the High Street, which is part of the Royal Mile in the old town of Edinburgh. So it's goodbye from Beverly, goodbye from David, goodbye from Barbara,
Bye.
Goodbye from Mike, goodbye. And it's goodbye from Joe. So thanks again, and we'll see you all again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.